So here we are at one of Atlanta's largest YMCA facilities here. I'm here with Lauren Koontz, who is the CEO of YMCA of Metro Atlanta, correct?
Yes.
We are still living through COVID-19, year 2020, but we have two benches here with enough social distance between us. So if you're okay with it, let's take our masks off for purposes of this conversation.
Perfect.
So I've been starting these conversations with a little bit of a summary of the track club. So if you can bear with me for 1 second. So the track club is a 55-year-old nonprofit. And for our entire history, we have stayed completely focused on our mission, and that's to impact health and wellness through running and walking. We stay out of partisan issues. We are apolitical. But this summer, when we learned about the murder of Ahmaud Arbery, we took an unprecedented step for the track club. And we spoke about, we injected ourselves in this conversation on race because he was killed when he was running. And at that point, we made the decision to be part of an effort to root out racism in the sport of running. And we decided we would use this setting called Common Ground to do so. So we're constantly pushing people to move forward, to run and to walk. But now we're suggesting people sit down and have a conversation. So again, welcome and thank you for being part of this conversation. So first question, are you a runner or walker yourself?
I'm a proud walker. My husband is a runner. But a fun fact is that my first job in the nonprofit space here in Atlanta was actually running team and training for the state of Georgia for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. So in that capacity, I had the opportunity to work with the Atlanta Track Club probably 20 years ago.
Got it. The world has changed a lot in those 20 years.
Absolutely, sure has.
So let's turn to your current role here at the YMCA. Can you speak to what the YMCA's mission is and how many people you reach in Metro Atlanta?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's probably the most challenging about the Y is that we do so many things. And so people usually associate the Y with the piece of the Y that they personally have touched or that their family has touched, right? But in actuality, the Y has been here in Atlanta since 1858. We're 162 years old. And really what's amazing is our mission has never fundamentally changed. And that's to build healthy mind, body, and spirit. And what I love about that mission is that it's evergreen. It's as relevant today as it was 100 years ago. So when I think about the challenges that we face around the pandemic, the challenges that we face as it relates to racial equity and social unrest, really coming back and looking at that through the prism of building healthy mind, body, and spirit allows us to take our core capabilities and create programs that are relevant for what's happening in this generation or this time.
When you say mind, body, and spirit, do you see them all together, or are those three different buckets that you have programming for each of those?
Both. I mean, I think they all are interdependent. I don't think you can truly reach your full potential if you are not holistically addressing your mind, body, and spirit in kind of a balanced way. But we do have specific programming that falls within each of those areas. So for instance, in mind, we're the largest provider of early learning in the state of Georgia. A lot of people don't know that about the YMCA of Metro Atlanta. We serve 3,000 plus children in early learning every day. 2,000 of those children are through Early Head Start and Head Start. So the majority of kids that we're serving are low income families, and our whole goal is to ensure that they are ready to start kindergarten on a path to read by 3rd grade. We're a large after school and extended kind of school provider, 50 sites of after school normally. When you think about the body piece, you know, I kind of jokingly say that the world drastically changed when Jane Fonda put on that leotard, but you know, we had been in that wellness space for a long time. Right now, we're beginning to think more and more about health disparities. We're opening a new Y at Morehouse School of Medicine later this fall, and it's going to be a really amazing opportunity to think about how can the Y be a community-facing arm that's working directly with the medicine and the researchers at Morehouse to look at preventative disease and prevention of disease and management of chronic disease. You think about the spirit piece of what we do. Social emotional health is becoming such a huge part of what we're being asked to do in our communities, kids and families, seniors, social isolation, all the things that have come with this pandemic and even before. So the Y is being asked to step up in different ways across our communities to really provide programming and serve in that mind, body, and spirit space.
And the Y that you're opening at Morehouse, is that going to face the community, the students at Morehouse, the faculty?
All of it. So it's really meant to be an asset for the community. And it's just a fantastic partnership with Morehouse School of Medicine, who really recognize that this is an opportunity to provide something not only for their students and faculties, but to the larger community on the West Side. So, those are the types of projects we get really excited about. We're sitting here at the Andrew and Walter Young Family YMCA. It's been here for 60 years. But just in 2021, we're going to be welcoming the Atlanta Police Foundation that'll be opening up their third At Promise Center on this site. And it really creates an opportunity to have a national model of a YMCA and a At Promise Center working together on behalf of the community to serve those who need us most.
So you referenced Atlanta Police Foundation. That's a nice segue over to the crime and murder of Ahmaud Arbery. I understand you're from Brunswick, Georgia.
Yes.
And anything that happens in Brunswick, I would imagine, gets your attention. But when you first heard, and then possibly saw that video, how did that impact you? How did you feel about that?
It was like a punch in the gut. I think that when I saw that video, I was almost physically sick. I mean, you see a young man in the prime of his life being hunted down. And I know that neighborhood. I know that street. And for that to happen in a place that I love, it's extremely upsetting. And I don't want Ahmaud Arbery, I don't want him to be forgotten. I think what's happening right now is so important as we really address the challenges around reforming police and training. But, what happened to him in terms of vigilantes coming after him because of the color of his skin, that can't be lost either, because that is the latest story in a long line of vigilante type actions. And I'm so excited that the Atlanta Track Club has taken up this cause, these conversations, and doing it in memory and in honor of an individual who did nothing more than suffer from the fate of being running while black.
So his death is clearly very personal to you, based on your own humanity, but because you're from Brunswick. How do you take that personal emotion and bring that back into your office and your day job? How have you changed the way you see the YMCA's mission here as a result of what's been happening this summer?
Yeah. So we had already started our strategic planning work for our Y 2025 plan. And that started with member focus groups and community listening tours and talking with partners, looking at data with the Atlanta Regional Commission. So we were kind of well on our way before the pandemic hit in creating that next plan that will go into effect January 2021. And the fundamental question that we were asking ourselves as a part of the strategic planning process was, what does building healthy mind, body, and spirit look like in 2020 and beyond? And when the protests began in Atlanta and we began to see the pain and all of the hurt that was happening as it related to racial inequity, we changed that question. And the question changed to, what does building healthy mind, body, and spirit with equity at the heart of it look like in 2020 and beyond? And it really reframed the entire conversation. And it's been something that we have continued to engage our staff, our board members, our community members in. the Wednesday after the protests that began in Atlanta, we had a conversation that was open to all of our staff, part-time, full-time, and one of our past board chairs moderated it and facilitated it for us. And it was an incredible opportunity for our team members to come together and really talk about their own lived experiences and for others to hear that. And we made a promise to ourselves after that that couldn't just be the beginning and the end of the conversation. We did a equity survey across all of our membership and across all of our staff, really asking what should equity look like at the YMCA, inside of our walls and in the communities. We got more than 600 responses, and they were very specific. I mean, really good, rich information. And so our leadership team really took some time to work through those responses and then have begun to take some steps in terms of setting up an equity cohort that will lead our employee resource groups. We have had, even here at the Andrew and Walter Young Family YMCA, their local advisory board put on a wonderful town hall about 6 weeks ago where they had Andrew Young and Walter Young and a number of other, Chief Rodney Bryant, teens that are in our program or leadership programs here, doing a panel about, the police and teens in Southwest Atlanta. So it's really a commitment to, just like what you're doing, continuing the conversation and making sure that equity is a non-negotiable at the Y. I always say that, when I came into the role a little over a year ago, I said that my two non-negotiables are child safety and fiscal responsibility. And really now there's a third one, it's equity. And I think we have to be that explicit about our expectations of our staff, of our members, and of our communities at large.
That survey that with the 600 respondents, that was just this summer?
It was. Yeah, so we had the conversation in early June, and then really within a week, we sent out this survey and gave people about 3 weeks. So by early July, we had, a lot of qualitative data that we could really take and look at and then begin to kind of see what were the trends and what could we take from that and begin to create some priorities that were actionable.
So while a lot of people are talking about it, you are well down the road on actionable efforts.
Well, my team kind of gives me a hard time because I want to move really quickly, right? But they also challenge me to say, if we're going to do this the right way, it has to be authentic. And so we've started a series of conversations. Last Thursday, we had all of our staff came together for a connect where we really talked about where we've been through the pandemic, where we are now, and where we're going. And I introduced really 3 kind of key concepts that we as an entire staff team are going to need to work through together, I think, to be the type of relevant organization we need to be. So later this month in September, we're going to have a conversation with all of our team members around resiliency and what does being a more resilient Y look like. And I think we've lived it through the pandemic, but how do you absorb those shocks and become stronger and better? The second in the series will be, how do we become a more equitable YMCA? And that's another opportunity for all of our team members to have their voice heard, that they can really pour into this equity cohort and create that work and co-author it together. And then the third one will be, how do we become a more innovative YMCA?
So it sounds like very similar paths that we're on. We're not, Atlanta Track Club has called 33,000 members, not as large and not as big a reach as YMCA here in Metro Atlanta. When, as I referenced earlier, we entered the conversation when Ahmaud was killed, we were paralyzed when we saw George Floyd's killer. We didn't know whether we should be speaking, whether we should be listening, but to your point, felt like we have to do something. We have to. So we sent an email, or I sent an email to our membership and said, hey, listen, we're not going to do anything right now. We're gonna listen and learn, and there's a lot of that happening. But then we're going to act on what those learnings are. There were a wide range of responses. Yeah. From thank you for being part of this conversation, to hey, nice job, to hey, you're a running organization. I didn't join a running organization to be part of that conversation. Yeah. Do you get any of that feedback as well?
Absolutely. When that survey went out to members, we got the exact same range. And I personally responded to every single of the hundreds of comments that came in. I just took a Saturday and I sat down and I went through all of them and I personally responded because I wanted them to know that I'd read it and I cared about their feedback wherever their opinion was on it. You know, the Y, very similarly, we're an apolitical organization. And I always say we're grounded in our mission, we're guided by our values of caring, honesty, respect, and responsibility, and we're inspired by our vision to be an organization that champions communities where everyone belongs. I feel that that vision is more relevant now than it's ever been. And so I absolutely got some, you know, interesting feedback. Same sort of thing. I didn't join the Y to get your stance on this. Our response was, we are a community-facing organization. We represent the community, and we will continue to always try to live up to those values and to that vision. And it's going to require us to be bold and to be brave. And we think it's the right thing to do. And, you know, the conversation is changing. And I think sometimes you have to be willing and be brave enough as an organization to say, you know, this is who we are. This is who we've always been. We're just maybe going to be a bit more vocal about it because we do want to be an organization that champions communities where everyone belongs. That's a bold statement. We have to live it. We can't just say it. And that may make people uncomfortable. But that's the beauty of organizations like the Atlanta Track Club and the Y. People can opt out. If they're not comfortable with kind of, you know, what you want to share, that's okay. You know, that they don't have to stay. My goal is I want the Y to be a beacon in the community where people both out in the community and inside of our buildings, whether they're team members, volunteers, anyone, that they know that this Y is for them.
But pre-June, admittedly, our approach, or my approach as the executive director at Atlanta Track Club, was to try to further a conversation around diversity, inclusion, and equity in a way that didn't offend anyone.
Absolutely.
And it's amazing how at least my own mindset has changed. It feels as if we need to be willing to break things to make progress. Sounds like you have a similar.
Absolutely. I feel there have been many sacred cows at the Y and really any organization, right? That people don't like to talk about things. It's the way we've always done things, or it's just uncomfortable to have difficult conversations. But I think that what has happened through the pandemic, and I think we were all in this place of unrest, emotional, physical, we were struggling. And then to lay everything around social justice on top of it, it almost was like an ember that both of these things together, not just for the people who were suffering the most, but for all of us, we're all of a sudden saying, you know what, no, we have to be brave. I do think there is a level of boldness and bravery, especially with white leaders people are saying, no more, I can't be quiet, I can't be complicit, I have to be willing to have tough conversations. And I think the fierceness of those conversations and the willingness to be uncomfortable and the willingness to hear things that, you know, you haven't heard before. That's all part of our journey. We're all on a different journey. But I believe in Atlanta and I believe in our communities. And I think to ignore it or to turn away at this point would be, certainly for me, I feel like I would be shirking my responsibility as really the chief stewardship officer of an organization that has, you know, gone through integration, has accepted women members. I mean, these are milestones that we've gone through in our 162 years, right? I mean, we have to continue to adapt and evolve to be the organization that the community calls us to be. We can't get stuck in what we used to be.
Historically, I'm just curious, has the YMCA been a leader in the area of integration?
You know, I think when I look back at the Butler Street Y, which was a separate, independent Black YMCA here in Metro Atlanta, very important in the civil rights movement. And it breaks my heart that they're no longer here. That the organization lost their charter through YUSA because of their financial footing back around the economic downturn. And you think about that Y, and they hosted something called the Hungry Club back in the late 50s and early 60s here. And it was the first opportunity really of Black and white leadership in Atlanta coming together at the Butler Street Y, sitting down and talking about race. and really talking about the Atlanta way. And so, I wouldn't say that the YMCA of Metro Atlanta has been a national leader in integration. I would say that we worked really closely with the Butler Street Y. And then as the country began to shift, we were obviously right there. But I mean, honestly, welcoming women into the Y and integrating the Y were happening all around the same time in the 60s.
So the track club aspires to have a membership base, a staff, and a board that is reflective of the racial diversity of Atlanta. And we're inching, crawling, moving forward in that direction. Our membership base, at least from a racial perspective, has seen significant growth in its diversity. Our staff, we're lagging. We're working on it. We're moving there. How is the YMCA in sort of in this area, in this metric, reflective of the diversity of Atlanta?
I think our staff is incredibly reflective of the diversity of Atlanta. We have 18, membership locations. We have 2 youth and teen centers, 13 early learning centers, 50 after school sites. So we cover a large region, and we always strive for the staff at our locations to reflect the community they serve, and to also, inject diversity into communities where maybe they aren't as diverse, in whatever way you're looking at that. I would say we probably still have a little work to do as it relates to our board. I was actually looking at our board numbers yesterday. It's about 1/3 people of color. It's about 1/3 women. But it's still, predominantly men. And that probably has a lot in the legacy of we are called the Y, but, we are the Young Men's Christian Association traditionally, right? So again, we've got to continue to be thoughtful and strategic about how we seek out board leadership and others to be a part of these conversations, because it changes the tenor and tone when you have the right leadership and the right people at the table, challenging you. I think, but we don't have all the answers. I mean, I was on a panel recently where people were asking, how do you feel the Y in Atlanta is doing as it relates to race and equity? And I said, we have a long way to go. And it's not so much that the numbers aren't reflective in terms of our membership or the program participants or the kids that we serve or the staff. To me, it's more about creating intentional pathways in how we hire and how we create opportunities for job growth and career growth. So I think where we have work to do is just to be more intentional to ensure that we are thinking about how we bring people into the organization and how we help them have a path to a long career with our organization.
Speaking of intentional, does it make sense for you, or do you, maybe said a different way, at what age do you think it's appropriate for organizations like the Y or Atlanta Track Club to inject conversations on race?
It's a really interesting question and one that's very timely. So we are a large provider of day camp. And so just kind of to give you a bit of a backstory of kind of what happened this summer. So on March 13th, like everybody else, we had to close all of the doors of our YMCAs, our programs, and we shut down really for 2 months. But what we did as a leadership team was came together and asked ourselves, based on our core capabilities and the pandemic, what can we do that would serve the community? And so we were able to work with 8 different hospital systems and fairly quickly stand up what we were calling emergency child care for health workers. And so between the end of March and the end of May, we served more than 3,500 children of nurses, first responders like police and firefighters, even those that were working in grocery stores and warehouses. If you could not work remotely, we had a program, and we had gone through working with the CDC and the drop-off procedures and everything. We learned very quickly about social distancing and mask wearing and hand washing. That program was so successful and in such need, we pivoted it to this summer to create our summer day camp program, which was a variation of what we do every summer. And the WISE Summer Day Camp program is really a affordable and quality way for working families to have a place for their children to be while they work, right? And so we took that program around the healthcare workers and first responders and those on the front lines, and we shifted it and opened up our day camp at all of our branches, but running at about 32% capacity to be able to monitor the social distancing and all of that. So day camp kicked off the week after the protests started here in Atlanta. Children do not have filters. If you have children, you know that, right? And so they came in the next week asking questions, very pointed questions, scared, uncertain, not really knowing how to process not only the pandemic, but everything they were seeing on TV and what they were hearing. And very quickly, it became clear to us that we needed to be thinking about how we interacted with children this summer in a different way to be reflective of the questions that they had. And I was so proud of all of our day camp counselors. They came together virtually very quickly, and they worked with our learning and training team to come up with a curriculum about how our day camp counselors, and think of this, many of our day camp counselors are teenagers and college students, how we could train them to have authentic, honest, and kind conversations about race with kids as young as 5 years old. And we created this training, and it was incredibly cathartic for the staff members involved, but then they were able to turn around and have those same sorts of conversations with kids and be able to answer questions honestly. And it was so powerful. And it's a training that we're now going to put into every single youth-facing, teen-facing program that we have. Because if we are an organization that champions communities where everyone belongs, we need to be able to have authentic and different and difficult conversations with everyone. I think us trying to shield children, thinking that they're not old enough to have conversations, I mean, of course, age appropriate, they pick up on so much. And the fact that they were asking questions really told us that we needed to be proactive in talking with them. And we, of course, we were very transparent in sharing with parents. We had a daily newsletter of going out to all parents. This is what we're going to talk about today. And we're going to focus on using kind words. And we're going to focus on the values of the why and have exercises around that and how we lift each other up and we find commonalities as opposed to differences. So it was a really powerful experience that stemmed from kids.
Sounds like it. So as you stand up curriculum or further conversations like that, what headwinds do you face? Is there, because you guys are farther along than we are.
I don't know. I think we're all just trying to navigate it with no playbook, but we're trying. We're all working through it. But challenges. I think we're a large, geographically diverse organization with lots of different program lines. And, the pandemic made it harder for us all to connect as team members, not being able to come together, having to connect by Zoom. And, when you have really challenging and difficult topics, those are hard things to talk about when you're not sitting on a bench face to face without a mask. And, we have to find really creative ways to not miss this opportunity to have these conversations and try to do it in an authentic way that doesn't give people a voice or doesn't lend itself to people feeling that they can be heard. I think one of the biggest challenges is just where we are in this pandemic and the fact that you can't physically be with people all the time in small group settings to have these conversations. I think the other challenge is that there is so much division, obviously. I mean, people are so weary of what's happening politically in terms of the division. And I think people are afraid that some of these difficult conversations around race are just part of a political frenzy. I think it's all of our responsibility to, again, incorporate equity into the fabric and the DNA of the mission and of what we do as an organization and not let it be just, oh, that was the summer of 2020 when we talked about that. This has to be something that we all collectively say, this is important to our organization, it's important to our community, and that we truly believe will be stronger and better if we embrace it and lead with it.
So this is probably the 10th or 15th conversation that we've had on a bench with a like-minded leader or a like-minded organization, and I've learned a ton already. One of the things that I've learned is that I need to be talking to other white leaders and not depending on my black friends to tell me if I'm doing something right or wrong. Do you have a go-to move, someone that you bounce ideas off of as we all navigate through this sort of uncharted territories?
Well, I feel really fortunate. Back in 2017, 2018, I was in Leadership Atlanta. And so my growing and learning journey on this topic really, was amped up as a part of that process. And I feel incredibly fortunate to be able to go to any one of the people that was in my class and have really great conversations with. But, I also reach out to my peers that are doing the same sort of work. So whether that's Kyle Wade, Matt Piper at Open Hand. I mean, I could go on and on. I have so many people that I respect that are doing such important work pre-pandemic, during the pandemic, post-pandemic. And I think we're all, the silver lining of this pandemic and everything that's happened during it is that, we all wanted to partner. We all wanted to think about partnering, but none of us have the resources or the bandwidth to do everything that we want to do. But we're seeing all the needs that's there. So the silver lining is I think there is a deep desire across nonprofits in Atlanta to truly partner in ways that we can holistically address community challenges. And what part can we work with? I think about our friends at Chris 180 and the fact that they come in and do trauma-informed care training for our teachers. There's so many groups that do such amazing work. And when we truly figure out what each of us can bring to the table and we collectively come at it from that, I think that's when we're going to see systemic change within our community. So I reach out to my Leadership Atlanta friends. I have been fortunate enough to work in Atlanta in the nonprofit industry for 20 plus years. And I'm on a journey to learn. And so I love talking to people. I generally like people. And so I really enjoy just listening and talking and getting someone else's perspective. I'm a big believer that to soften or to open minds, sometimes you have to soften hearts. And so I just think listening to other people's lived experiences, understanding their perspective, and we have to check one another, check our team members, our volunteers to understand that the way that we show up, the things that we say, the things that we do really do matter, and that they inform the culture of the organization.
Well said. So we're a running organization and a walking organization, building mind, spirit, body fits sort of within sort of the sphere of how we operate. Presumably you have a good number of runners and walkers at most of your YMCA locations.
I hope so.
We've sort of been on parallel tracks
yeah.
for a long time. And so you talk about maybe the silver lining to COVID has forced us to slow down and to conduct some self-examination. Mm-hmm. When I look at all the partners that the YMCA has, those are many of our partners.
Yeah.
But we're not really partnering directly.
Yeah.
And I wonder whether, as we look to root out racism in running, and you work to build mind, spirit, and body for everyone, there's some overlap in our circles there. And I just wonder if we can start a conversation off camera to say how do the track club and the YMCA sort of work together in this overlap area?
I was thinking the same thing as I was driving over here for this conversation today. I wish I could say I was running, but I was thinking about why don't we have running clubs that are leaving from our Ys that are, the Atlanta Track Club is helping to inform, right? Again, we don't have all the answers for what we do. Why are we talking about, kids-based running programs and walking programs? There would be nothing that would be more powerful than if you look at some of our Ys that are, from a geographic sense, 99% African American, like the Andrew and Walter Young Family YMCA. If you look at our villages at Carver YMCA, and even to a certain degree still our East Lake YMCA. I mean, there are a handful of YMCAs that really thinking about how could we lift up Ahmaud Arbery's memory and turn running in these communities into a powerful collective force that shows strength and unites us. I think there's a lot of opportunities there that could be really exciting.
Amen. Look forward to exploring that with you.
Me too.
So as we wrap up, we will leave a bench here for the YMCA, Metro Atlanta, and hopefully it will serve as a physical place for conversations like this, as well as a figurative sort of metaphorical space that shows that we both are committed to furthering this conversation in our respective communities here in Atlanta. So thanks again for taking the time, and best wishes on your journey.
Thank you. You too.